That night, All Hallows' Eve, celebrated for some insane reason on the unusual date of August 31st, 2024, was not just a holiday, but an entity. The wind, icy and heavy despite it still being summer, carried an unmistakable smell of burnt pumpkin and a metallic tang that Alex struggled to identify, but which made the back of his neck prickle. The neighborhood streets were transformed by a thick cover of dry leaves. Where they came from in August no one knew, that cracked underfoot. A chaotic symphony of sharp, distorted laughter from masked children echoed between the decorated gates. Alex, a 16-year-old boy, was at his peak. For him, this out-of-season Halloween was not about the sweetness of chocolate, but the acidic taste of power. He was the scare guy, and his fun was not asking for treats. It was terrorizing those who did. He operated with sadistic precision, wearing rubber masks that seemed to breathe in the shadows and timing his screams to hit peak terror. The sight of panic flooded him with an adrenaline rush. But that night's hunt was about to take him to a new and terrifying frontier. He was crouched behind a withered bush when he spotted his latest target, a little girl alone. She wore only a cheap black party cloak and held a candy bag with both hands, walking with strange slowness. Alex donned his most grotesque mask and leaped out in front of her, stamping his feet hard on the asphalt. The scream he let out was so powerful that a nearby dog barked in protest and a porch light flickered, burning out for an instant before dying. The girl dropped her bag. The silence that followed was not the silence of someone preparing to cry, but of something waiting. She didn't scream, didn't cry, and, crucially, didn't run. She just looked at Alex. It was a gaze that seemed to penetrate directly to the soul behind the mask. Fixed, cold, heavy like the humidity that hung in the air, with a void that sucked the light. Alex, unnerved for a second, laughed louder than necessary, gave a dramatic, mocking bow, and walked away. A few minutes later, the adrenaline began to give way to a chill. He was absolutely sure there was another sound besides his own, footsteps. He stopped abruptly, turning around. Nothing. Just the distorted reflection of the orange streetlights in the sidewalk puddles. He smiled, convinced it was one of his friends trying a silly revenge, but the footsteps continued. They simply kept pace, maintaining a constant, agonizing distance. The wind shifted direction, becoming suddenly cutting, and the dry leaves no longer crunched under his feet, but seemed to scrape and drag the asphalt, like fingernails on a chalkboard. Alex quickened his pace, the smile fading from his lips. He checked his watch. 11:48 p.m., almost midnight. The streets were becoming eerily deserted. He began to march, the noise of his own sneakers echoing loudly. And beneath that sound, he noticed the other, lighter, softer, but relentless. It was the sound of bare feet touching the cold asphalt, with a wet, rhythmic cadence, as if water were dripping with every step. 11:50 p.m. He was already jogging discreetly. The mercury streetlights began to flicker in a sick synchrony with his breathing. He rounded a corner and, before the darkness of the alley was completely swallowed by the lights of the next street, he heard it. A giggle. It wasn't the loud, mocking laughter of his friends. It was soft, feminine, damp, and very close. So close that the sound seemed to vibrate at the back of his neck, like a whisper. Alex stopped, air trapped in his lungs. The sound ceased instantly. He didn't look back. He ran. 11:53 p.m. Panic took over. His heart felt like a maddened drum. Only 2 blocks remained. Almost there, he repeated, but the air was heavy. It was then that he stopped running and stopped breathing. She was there. A few feet away, standing in the middle of the street, under the weak light of a flickering lamp, the same black cloak, the same girl. Her body was motionless, upright, and where her shoulders met, there was only darkness. Her hands held something, cradling it carefully. It was a head, her own head. The eyes wide open, the face smeared with a dark, viscous substance, and her thin mouth was pulled back in a smile that revealed too much. A smile that didn't belong to a human being, but to an abyss. Alex felt an electrical shock paralyze every fiber of his body. The wind suddenly died. The silence was so absolute that he could hear the ringing of blood in his own ears. He smelled the metallic odor that had bothered him all night, realizing it was iron. It was blood. The girl took a step, and then another. Each step made a dry, hollow sound, the plop-plop echo of bare, dirty feet on the cold asphalt. The head in her hand swayed slightly, and the empty eyes seemed to absorb the light, focused solely on Alex. He tried to run, but his legs were cement. He tried to scream, but his lungs wouldn't obey. His wristwatch flashed, 11:59 p.m. When she was just an arm's length away, she raised her arm and pointed the severed head at him. And the girl's eyes blinked. Once. Even detached from her body, the horror consumed him entirely. Alex collapsed and darkness came, not as a relief, but as a heavy, cold curtain, with the last sound he heard being the final dry plop of her feet next to his ear. When Alex woke up, it wasn't the alarm that woke him, but the raw sunlight streaming into his room. The sheet was drenched in cold sweat, and his heart was still pounding. He was home. He rushed downstairs. His mother in the kitchen looked surprised. "You slept heavily, huh? I thought you wouldn't even wake up for school." "Mom, how did I get home yesterday?" She shrugged. "You came home late, around midnight. You came in quietly and went straight to your room. You didn't take off your cloak and didn't answer when I spoke. You smelled strange, metallic." Alex stumbled, pale. He went back upstairs, sat on his bed. It was just a hallucination, but looking at the floor, next to the door, he saw the evidence that destroyed his attempt at peace. Dark mud marks, the size of a child's foot, arranged in a small, methodical trail leading from his door to the center of the room, where it stopped abruptly. That August 31st was etched in his mind, but time initially acted as a band-aid. Alex pretended he had moved on, but he didn't sleep well anymore. The first symptom of his curse came on nights of gentle wind. He dreamt of her. The setting was always the same, the deserted street, the black cloak that seemed to move on its own, the head in her hands, and that empty, unchanging gaze staring at him through the dark. In the dreams, the girl never spoke. She just approached, always slowly, with the same dry plop-plop of bare feet. When the bloody face in her hand was inches from his, Alex awoke with a start, the room icy cold. Sometimes he felt the pressure of something cold and damp on his temple. Over time, the frequency of the nightmares decreased, but the intensity increased. Weeks, sometimes months, passed without the nocturnal visit. But when the wind blew differently, bringing that visceral cold that seemed to come from inside the walls, and the air began to smell faintly of burnt pumpkin, Alex knew it would be one of those nights. He started a war against sleep. But his body, exhausted by anxiety and deprivation, always betrayed him. And when he drifted off, there she was, waiting in the subconscious fog. In one particularly rainy September, the dream changed. He was back on the dark street, but this time, the black cloak didn't come from the darkness. It emerged from his own house. He was at the same spot where he first saw her, but now he was the one wearing the black cloak, and he held, not the candy bag, but garden shears. The fog was so thick it covered the streetlights. When Alex looked to the side, he saw the girl waiting for him, but she wasn't holding her own head, she was holding his. Alex's head was pale and bloody in the girl's hands, and the still-living mouth opened and closed in a silent, horrific scream. Alex woke up screaming. The entire room was frozen, the window open, the wind violently blowing the curtains inward. And for an instant, a mere fraction of a second before the streetlight failed, he swore he saw a piece of black fabric, like a cloak, quickly disappearing around the corner, carried by the wind. The date on his phone calendar showed that the next October 31st was approaching. Since that day, Alex never played with fear again. He avoids Halloween. He avoids dark streets, alleys, and worst of all, he avoids looking into mirrors after sunset. But the wind. The wind still blows sometimes. Softly, dragging the dry leaves across the asphalt with that scraping nail-on-chalkboard sound. The same sound of rhythmic, damp, bare footsteps. And on those nights, he doesn't sleep. He locks himself in, covers himself completely with all the blankets, and whispers, almost in tears, "It was just a dream. A damn dream that ended." Even knowing deep down That the game that started with the fear of others ended with his own, because every time he finally tries to surrender to sleep, he feels the weight of someone materializing at the foot of his bed. And amidst the oppressive silence of the room, a soft giggle, muffled, damp, and undeniably childish, whispers near his ear, an icy breath that wakes him up in panic. "Did you like the scare, Alex? You gave me the idea."